here this evening. And we normally do an open mic scenario where we talk about a number of issues and we invite your conversation, phone calls, or input. Our telephone number is 858-251-6111, or you may join us online at godradio1.com, and we do stream on Facebook as well with this program. We're anticipating the arrival of a guest that we've invited, and we're going to go forward with a number of issues that we want to talk about until that occurs. Over the next 3 weeks leading up to the primary, we are going to be speaking with a number of people and also including a number of candidates. We want you to be very mindful of this election process. And so after we do this introduction with Dr. Thompson, I'm going to share some initial things with you as we move in this direction. So, Dr. Thompson, thank you for being here with us and partnering in this.
Well, Dr. Warren, I'm just going to jump right into it, and I want to know what's going on back south where the whites got captured after they had their I want to say they had a plan, but it didn't seem like their plan made any sense.
Well, yeah, you're referring to the guard who ran off with the inmate, and
Yes.
they were free for at least a week, and they finally caught up with them in a motel. And of course, there was an encounter, but because their vehicle turned over, I guess, in pursuit, it didn't turn into the shootout that it was probably scheduled to be
Mm-hmm.
because of the number of weapons that they found, cash, ammunition, and all those things. The real shocking part of it is that the former prison guard, in the course of the event, uh, supposedly committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And that verdict is tentatively in, but still out from the coroner's standpoint. And this was a lady that had a 17-year exemplary record as a corrections officer, so we'll
Mm-hmm.
never know what happened. Um, the White himself, he claimed they were married, even though they had the same last name. Everything said they weren't related. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just one of those distractions. But as much as people look at that kind of distraction, we got so many more things still going on, especially concerning us as people of color, situations involving, deaths that shouldn't be, like the young man who fell out of the amusement park vehicle
Mm-hmm.
when less than $5 could have prevented that in terms of maintenance. So there are a lot of things, and we're going to return to some of them. Um,
Well, Dr. Warren, we always have the hot topics, but right now we actually have our special guest on and very excited for her today. I'm going to let you introduce her, and I'm going to work the controls right now.
okay. Well, we have Supervisor Nora Vargas with us, and she's well known in the community throughout the South Bay. She's also a very active member of the Southwestern College Community College Board before moving on with this position. And she serves now as vice chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. And so we're going to go into several areas with her, but I would like to give her an opportunity to say hello. And having her here with us is a part of our plan to bring on all of our elected officials at some point. She becomes, I think, number 3 with the Board of Supervisors, and there are 5 members there, and we're working our way through other folks. So, Supervisor Vargas, we'd like to give you a moment to say hello and just say a few words, and then we'll get to some discussion.
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am excited to be able to have a chat with you, and thank you for having me.
Okay, would you say a word? I need you to say a word about your district, and I'm very concerned about your district because um, we have a situation where we just finished going through redistricting. I don't have total recall in terms of how you came out with that, and so we know that you have the southern part of the county, and we have a really unique scenario. For instance, it's interesting that San Ysidro is in the city of San Diego, but it skips over National City and Chula Vista to be included. And so, just say a word about how you came out with the demographics of the census, because most people haven't internalized that, and it's very important since we have not for your seat, but we do have elections coming up, primary June 2nd, and several of your colleagues are up.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. And I think, as you know, the county supervisor, county board of supervisors has five representatives. We just went through the redistricting process, just as everyone else, and each district now has a representation of 638,118 people, each person, out of the five, right? And so these five supervisors, as you know, manage a budget of about $7.23 billion. And the redistricting data is based on the data source of 2020 census, which both you and I know was a really tough census for, particularly for our communities of color, because of lack of resources, lack of information. And we did, I think, everything we could, but there's so much more work that needs to be done. I have to say that I am saddened that there were portions of my district that I really love that are no longer part of my district when I ran for office, that were overlapping with council member Monica Montgomery's district, that I really appreciated, that are no longer part of my district. And so that's kind of sad for me. I used to have Coronado as well and Point Loma. Those areas are no longer in my district. Now I have all of the southern portion of the district of District 1, right? So all of Otay Mesa, I have San Isidro, all of the 8th Council District, which is the southern portion. So I have Sherman Heights, I have Barrio Logan. I also have Chula Vista, which is the second largest city in the county of San Diego. And if you haven't been in a while to the east side of Chula Vista, as you know, it has really developed. I have National City, Imperial Beach, and then I also now have the areas of East Village. And so I have all of that portion. I also now have the communities of Golden Hill. And I also have the community of Golden Hill, South Park, and also Bonita, which is the unincorporated area, which is the biggest one. And the East Otay Mesa part is also the unincorporated. So it's a huge, huge district, as you know. But I am, thrilled to. Oh, also La Presa, the East County. I have a portion of East County now in my district. So I've been out there though, and I had a town hall already. I've been meeting with folks and trying to connect with them, since they didn't get to meet me when I was running for office, and so I felt it was important to get out there and hit the ground running as quickly as possible.
Well, it's when you say Bonita, that's always been a very interesting place. I lived in Bonita for many years before they put that new
Freeway.
freeway element, that toll roll in. And when I was running for the Senate,
Mm-hmm.
there was a big argument going there, and I discovered that the people who were further south, um, um, East Lake and Otay, and that they were really having some difficulties with Bonita because Bonita just didn't want to be inclusive with everyone else. I always said Bonita had kind of a La Jolla complex, uh, but they couldn't be. They weren't big enough to make it work. So it sounds like a
Yeah.
very interesting place, and it is true that your ward, your district does overlap District 4, Monica Montgomery, just as some of Assembly Member Fletcher's board does, I believe. So
Yeah.
we just have strange scenarios, and I don't think most people really understand as much. Now you move back to in-person meetings
Yes.
at this point, and so you've
Yes.
had some excitement with those meetings, and people showing up. I want to ask you about one area that I think it was to come up this week,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of amazed that there was an agenda item, I think, dealing with the definition of a woman.
Oh yes. Uh-huh. The
Uh,
CETA.
Okay,
It was specific to CETA. Uh-huh.
could you speak to that issue for the people who
Sure.
might have
Sure.
missed
Sure.
it?
Sure. So the CETA art ordinance was extremely important, because for me, as a healthcare advocate, as you know, I've been working on this particular issues over 25 years of my life, really, to focus on access and quality of healthcare and education for women and families across California. And so I've really tried to bring these values as a policymaker, right? And this ordinance is really focused on achieving gender parity, decreasing gender-based discrimination, and work towards the elimination of all acts of discrimination against women and girls in our county. Particularly, is making sure that we're using data points to make sure that as uh, we're looking at a county-wide intersection gender analysis. Basically, what that means is we're going to disaggregate data to make sure that women are getting paid equally the same amount of money. Are we distributing resources accordingly? What are we doing with our resources and our funds? I will say to you that the language and the ordinance came from a lot of work from the community. This was something that the Commission on the Status of Women, with input from the community, were able to define the ordinance. And there is a section in there that identifies women and girls, including transgender women and gender nonconforming women, as part of this. And so there was a lot of misinformation during the board meeting about what this board letter was, and to me, it's important to set the record straight. Right, we are in line with state and federal anti-discriminatory laws that are currently in place. There is nothing in the ordinance that says that we're going to focus solely on, on that we're going away from any of the current definitions.
Well,
And so it's
here's,
important. I'm sorry,
but
go ahead.
I'm sorry, but here's the point of contention with it because we don't have the time to get as deep as we want. I
Mhm.
understood that one of the major issues that came up was who could use a women's restroom, and
Yes,
that
no.
there was and so we need to clear that up because it was presented. We were in a call, Dr. Thompson, you remember, and it was almost presented as if this provision was going to make it possible for anyone who declared, a feminine gender, that they could just go in and use a women's restroom with no questions being asked, and people were very concerned about that.
No, 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 no. We're following the regular laws, and there's nothing about bathrooms or any other information on there. I think, Dr. Warren, what happens with particularly these issues, there's a lot of emotion behind them, and there are people who are completely opposed and completely in favor. It is very clear that in this definition, we are including transgender women as part of the ordinance, and I do support that. Right, I have to be very transparent about that. But there is nowhere in there, I mean, what we're trying to do is create a statement of values and goals to prevent and eliminate discrimination. In no way, shape, or form are we going to be changing any laws or anything related to bathrooms. Or there's also some misinformation regarding sports, and what our scope of guidance was for schools or anything of that nature. But it's
Well, the sports issue is going to get tied up in Title IX at some point
yes.
in terms of discussion. So that part will come later. But I just thought it was important for people to understand this issue about because you make reference to you're not changing any laws, but everybody is not clear. I mean, most places now have moved to signs that say all gender restrooms, but they are restrooms that are basically geared to serve an individual rather than a larger public facility.
Yeah.
But if I could, and Dr. Thompson, I don't want to leave you out of the discussion, and I want to get to this other issue in terms of the Human Relations Commission,
Yes.
which is historically it's been very important. It's been about finding its way and eliminating conflicts. This one in the county is named after Supervisor Leon Williams, which is one of the giants of human rights and civil rights in San Diego County. And we know that we've had some issues there in terms of people wanting to remove a member, and I watched in great detail the discussion when the bylaws were brought before the full body. I was rather disappointed that Chairman Fletcher didn't embrace all Supervisor Anderson and Desmond's suggestion of how there needed to be training involved here. So I think it's very important for people to understand that if the Board of Supervisors, through an action, created the Human Relations Commission, then the commission does not have the authority as a delegated body to do more than the authority that was given to it by the board. Are
Mhm.
you following me on that point? Because
Yes,
you
I
have people wanting to remove a person and they don't have that prerogative. The only person that can do that is the board itself. And I'm
yes.
very concerned the bylaws that were passed even made a people being offended with protected speech.
Yes.
And the concept of protected speech means just that, that is not subject to litigation. So have you all had some additional review of this issue? Because it's not going to go away. I see some people who are just kind of, bent on getting their way with this. You can speak to it for a moment if you would.
Of course. So, I actually wrote the letter with Supervisor Fletcher to ensure that we put it back on the Human Relations Commission to make sure that they really tackle this together and have a really, courageous conversations about the subject. I think it's important for us that the Human Relations Commission has to be able to uh, really decipher this the challenges and the conversations that were had in order for us to be able to move forward. And so it was really important to me to support the bylaws proposed by for us so that we can I have full faith that the commissioners are capable and they decide the best course of action for the collective commission. So that I did ask our CAO to make sure that all commissions have mechanisms to address issues that arise with regard to commissioners' actions and words, to make sure that civility is critical in any of this discussion. I think you have seen what has happened in our board of supervisors meetings, right? I mean, if I don't know if you have heard, right, the things that people have said against me or
Yes,
what
I
they said
followed it.
to Dr. Wooden, and I said some things where that I you know use some expletive like words that I probably should have used, and all that. But um, for me, it's really important that we find mechanisms to make sure that freedom of speech is protected, but at the same time that we're very mindful of how we are treating people, right? And I use the example of when the person used very derogatory words against Dr. Wooten, right? As a woman of color, I could not sit there and allow somebody to talk to another woman of color in front of me with racist, exploit, like, just the way that he behaved. Everybody said, "Oh, so courageous, blah blah blah." I'm not courageous. That's what anybody should be doing, right? You can agree to disagree, but the moment that you start saying hurtful and ill will intentioned things to people, then I think that we have a responsibility as human beings to stand up for each other. And so I think that if we as commissioners or as board members are don't even have the tools to lead by example, how can we expect that from our communities and from our youth? And for me, that's really important. I have to be careful about how I talk about this item that came before us yesterday, which was item 19, which Supervisor Lawson Remer took my recommendations a step further, which was to create these mechanisms that actually make sure that people have training on Robert rules of order,
Mm-hmm.
on making sure that people, which I think is fantastic, right? And it has very detailed information about how we're going to move forward to make sure that anybody who's going to be on a board understands that there's internal mechanisms that are created so that we are you know doing the right thing in each of these boards. And it's really interesting because I've been on boards and commissions for many years, right? I started off when I just turned 50 last year, and I started when I was in my early 20s and on nonprofit organizations. And Robert Rules of Order was the first thing that I learned. And when you learn how to use Robert Rules of Order, you never have to use any bad word. Like you don't have,
Yeah.
if you learn how to use those tools, you can
Yes.
Yeah.
outmaneuver anybody and do anything you want, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
Dr. Thompson had
yeah.
comment.
Now,
Yes.
one of the things that I was doing when I did talk to the commission, and I said is that if you all can't get this right, how can you really serve the community if internally you are not able to walk it through and actually find a way of getting back on the same page again? And so that was the challenge that I gave to them. I said, look, you cannot be the Race and Equity Commission, and y'all can't handle it with internal the things that you face. That's number one. Number two, I want to shout out to your dog because even your dog lifted his head up and said, I agree with you." And so, so, but what I wanted to ask you is if I would say to you, give me your top five agenda items that you're pushing forth in this season, what would be those top five?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Okay, so within healthcare, making sure that people have access to healthcare. So, it's really important to me. Medical expansion is critical for our communities, right? We still have a lot of people that have been impacted by COVID, and so COVID hit our communities particularly hard, right? Our essential workers. So I want to make sure that people continue to be safe. Our Even though our numbers are high when it comes to vaccination, people are not getting all the boosters right now. And so I want to make sure that people continue to stay safe and that we're able to get out of this. So that would be a big one for me, healthcare. Um, the economy, right? The, the economy hit our communities very hard. So I introduced the Office of Economic Prosperity and Community Development. And people ask me, why not just economic development? And I said, because we need to figure out a way for the county to reinvest our funds back into our communities and put the money back into our communities, right? Latinos, African Americans, Asian communities, we need to be the ones that are actually using those resources to build in our communities, right? Because the county has always been saying as the county is the safety net. But I think we can play a bigger role so that we can help our communities not just survive, but also thrive. And so we can do innovative things through community development, whether it's through housing and other projects like that, to really lift up our communities so that we can be part of the solution. Another topic that's extremely important to me is the environment. Environmental justice is extremely important for our communities here in the South Bay. Our kids, as even like, they grow up in such a beautiful community and they don't even get to go into our beaches because our beaches have been closed because of the Tijuana River Valley contamination. And so one of the first things that I did when I became elected within a couple of months was declare the Tijuana River Valley a public healthcare crisis. And as a result, I was able to been able to get additional resources so that we can make sure that we're really helping our community. So one of the things that an IQ tool is called, but last week I was at the beach in Imperial Beach and we were able to measure the water. In the past, in order to be able to test the water, it took about 2 days. Now you can go test it in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the afternoon, if you're allowed to go into the beach or not, which is super important, right? Because we don't want anybody to be swimming in messy beaches and contaminated beaches. And then also, I was able to create the Office of Environmental and Climate Justice. And the Governor Newsom, most recently appointed me to the California Air Resources California Air Resources Board, which is, they are setting the rules and laws to make sure that our communities have clean air.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important because, your zip code shouldn't decide whether or not you have access to clean air. And as you know, our communities of color have been impacted by emissions and by environmental injustices for years. And so for me, it's extremely important that I continue to fight there. And so we're getting additional dollars into our communities. And I guess last but not least, I think the fifth one would be making sure that our communities are staying healthy. And so um, really making sure that we are bringing dollars into the district, and we've been doing a good job, and particularly when with the ARPA funding being very innovative. And so I think you may or may not know that I led the efforts and to ensure that all of our kids that are 18 and under get to ride free on public transportation in San Diego County after about 11 years of our communities fighting to make sure that they can get free transportation for our youth. I started fighting for it last year, was able to partner up with Sandag. I serve as the chair of transportation for Sandag. And so as of May 1st, anyone who's a youth 18 and under is able to now just get a Pronto card or, use their phone and download it, and they're riding for free in the county of San Diego. And I think we need to encourage it. So
Are
if you
there
could encourage
are there
everybody,
some hourly restrictions on that, or is that a
no
24 hour?
restriction and 24 hours.
I turned 11 yesterday. Uh, I want to know if there are going to be a lot of folks like, I'm 11.
Yeah. So the cool part about it is, with anywhere that it says that you're under 18, you can use it. The other cool part about it is that Supervisor Fletcher, Chair Fletcher, in his capacity as MTS, he expanded it to foster youth up into the age of 24 for the pilot program.
Mhm.
And so I'm sharing this with you because I really want to make sure that we encourage your listeners to encourage, young people to use it, because the more they use it, we can make this permanent. Now I'm going to tell you, and you heard it here first, I want to make it permanent for anyone in the 24 and under, right? Because of our community college students, which is where I come from and why I got involved in politics. And then the other one is for our seniors, because I think our seniors deserve to have transportation at no cost as well. So
Does it cover seniors at this point?
not at this time. No,
Okay.
they,
Yeah.
they get it. They get it at a lower rate, but I think they should get it at no cost as well.
So one of the things I would be really curious about, how is this being advertised? I'm actually also an educator, and I work with a school that is we're 40% homeless.
Yes.
And so we apply our kids and get them pronto cards and things of that nature. But how is it really being put out there? Because literally, as an educator, this is the first time that I even heard about it, and I
My
feel bad.
goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I'm gonna make sure that somebody brings you a whole bunch of Corona cars tomorrow. We'll figure it out. I'll talk to my team so we can get you some. But we are working directly with the school district so that they can have them. Like, so I was just Suwada Unified School District. We got them a whole bunch of cards, and they were able to get them to the kids and different locations. We've been trying to get it out there, through social media and different
Well, if I
views. But
raise the question in terms of
yes, sir.
time, I'm concerned because we have community papers now. Voice and Viewpoint has a very strong partnership with the county through the pandemic, Health and Human
Mhm.
Services. We work with Sandag. A few things have been done, but there are two things you've got to be really conscious of. That first of all, social media cannot
Yes,
become the substitute for the due process element of putting things out that involve public dollars. And
100%.
people keep forgetting that. You can do social media as an addendum, but when you look at our community, our Chinese, Vietnamese, Filipino, Latino,
Oh yeah.
African American, there should be a campaign with all of these communities to ensure this. And it cannot be switched over to workforce partnership because
Yep.
that's one of the things that I have a problem with, that people think workforce partnership is a policy answer. Now,
Hmm.
the mayor of San Diego just got about a $19 million grant for funding to create some jobs for youth because I've been pushing for youth to be placed in all of the departments in internships. And the Pronto card answers part of that because I wanted to make sure that transportation was a factor so they didn't have to spend their money. But
Yep.
the solution is not just passing out cards. The solution is people read.
Yep.
We know from our analytics that a tremendous number of folks look at our resources online. And so we can't allow, you got great ideas. You've got seniors that could benefit, but it's not being promoted the way it should be. And I think you need
Yeah.
to take that back because it's not that the county can't afford to do it.
Yep.
County has the resources. It's just that you got some old school people with old ideas that don't want to wake up and go the next step that you're talking about.
And can I
You
just
have
say this
commitment.
before? Here,
Yes.
I want to say that I really, really want to celebrate the move open up transportation for the
Yes.
young people. I have to
Great.
celebrate you on this because of the fact that this is a game changer for a lot of our young people. And, I feel like I'm going to be a town crier on the radio show in the morning. I'm like, did y'all know? But I'm getting ready to call everybody, all the young people, say, y'all have no excuse for not going to school, that y'all
Yeah.
got, get your Pronto card. I'm excited about that because it's access. So I want to celebrate you for that.
Thank you. And you know what? I want to be very fair because I want us to use this as an example of how who you elect can make a difference, right? And not I'm not this magical one. No, it's not me. It's just that what happened was that there have been these community members that for 11 years were been fighting to try to get these free passes from City Heights, these community leaders, and many folks, like yourselves, folks been fighting for it, and there's never enough money. But when the ARPA funding came down, I said, well, let's do a pilot program, because I've learned the magical word of the county of San Diego. Let's do a pilot program, and let's partner up with Sandag. And because of my role as chair of transportation for Sandag, we were able to integrate it, and then in partnership, with other folks, people said, okay, we can do this. And Hassan was a great partner in this process. And together we were able to achieve it. But I think this is the kind of example that we need to share with people, right? The persistence, determination. And then you keep at it, and you're going to find that one elected official that's going to say, we're going to go at it, and we're going to fight for it, and we're going to get it done.
Well, look, this is an important point. We're not going to beat this to death, but when the Pronto card was advertised, that people, we had a situation until about a year ago, and maybe I'm off some, where if I needed to go from, say, San Ysidro to Grossmont, and I had to change at Trolley Towers, I had to pay an additional fare.
Yes.
So now they eliminated that, so we got one fare. But do all young people understand that the card is transferable to from bus to trolley and trolley to bus?
That's our goal, right? So like last week when I actually traveled from the trolley in San Isidro, I went to the 905 bus, and then I walked over to the San Isidro School District, so that people could see that you can actually just, obviously I had to pay it because I'm not a kid, but the young person who was with me, she didn't. And so we were trying to explain to folks how we were doing it and sharing the information. But I think we just have to keep reminding folks, and then they can get on any type of public transportation, right? So let's say you live in Skyline, anywhere where you live, and you've never been to Solana Beach,
Well,
go get
but
on
as
it.
chairperson of the Sandag Committee, from a policy standpoint, you can bring a recommendation to
Mhm.
codify what we just said.
Yes.
Okay, and that's what we need to have, not the distribution of bunches of cards, but a codification that lets us know through public media entities that people are being reminded ongoing that they have the opportunity to
Well,
take
you have my
advantage of
commitment.
this.
You have my commitment that I'm going to follow up with Sandag
Okay.
tomorrow.
I want to
And
raise another issue with you too, because Dr. Thompson and I are longstanding members of Black Men and Women United, and
Mhm.
this organization has been around since 2004. And so we meet every week
Mhm.
on Zoom with people from across the community. And one of the issues that was raised in terms of your supervisorial district, and it had been raised too for Supervisor Fletcher, he seems to have addressed it. But I keep having the comment that you do not have any African American members of your staff, and so I wish that you would just say a word about staffing in terms of this issue, because I'm always speaking up and fighting for and defending you, and people are always coming
Yeah.
back with this issue.
Yes, this is so. I did when I first started, and then the person left, and then we ended up filling the position with someone else. But I'm very intentional of making sure. I mean, I understand representation is critical, and so one of the things that I've done, and I'm not saying that you know it is important, and as and right now I have another position that is open, so I'm trying to make sure that I am casting a wide net, hoping that we can find some additional folks. I just had somebody leave, so opening it up for a digital media person
You just need
position.
to advertise it.
No,
That's we're here, right, Dr.
yeah, yeah.
Thompson?
Oh, I got you. I got you. It just
Yeah.
opened up. It just opened up. But the point is that I think there's a couple of different ways, not just, not just one staff member in my office, right? I have representation of all of my boards and commissions, right? Making sure that they're represented by African Americans. And every one of my boards and commissions has a large representation of African Americans on all of my boards and commissions. And I can't remember the number right now, but I've been very intentional about that because I wanted to make sure that we made a difference, and that those voices are at the table. And so know that it's duly noted, and that I'm trying in different ways to make sure that I continue to advocate for it. And I will say that I was also a champion to ensure that we hired the first African American woman as the probation officer. I was one of the co-chairs for the board of supervisors, which,
Well, people
that's the
are
other.
we know that part, okay? The boards, commissions, all that, but the it always comes back to the seat closest to the throne. And
Yeah,
so, no matter how many people you put in other places, folks are still looking at, based on the representation in the district, that's what they're looking for to see, as everybody's, and this is not just for you, but there needs to be people of color, including African American, in these
hmm,
offices. We have folks who have the capacity to
of
do
course,
so. And if the president can finally find an African American press secretary, then we know that we have enough capable people in San Diego County for some
yes.
of these positions. And so I wanted to do that. I know we've
Yeah.
moved in,
Uh,
we've been covering a lot of
yeah.
things, but Dr. Thompson.
And I want to say I want to give the teasing moment. Told someone that I wanted to meet you, and it was one of your staffers that was at the Jacob Center, and we were talking. I said I want to meet her, and she said, "Well, she's going to be here in a couple of minutes." And I don't know if you remember our meeting in the parking lot, and
Oh,
we
yes.
talked about it, and we said that we were going to connect and everything. And literally the very next week, your staffer was here at the studio, full tour, everything, and we connected on a couple of things. And so I do say when I do hear you say you follow through, you literally follow through and make sure your staff is following through. And I think that people are looking for an additional body to be on your staff because your staff is known to follow through. And I think that they're looking for that um, additional person of color on your staff that would actually say, "Wow, you probably would then be probably the most diverse office in
Mm-hmm.
the county."
Yeah, I think I'll be super honest with you. I it serving as the first Latina on the county board of supervisors in 172 years.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that the only other person of color was Leon Williams,
Mm-hmm.
and so the responsibility that I have on my shoulders, is a large one, but I feel equipped to do it, and I don't in any shape, way, or form feel uh, like I don't think about all these things about how to make sure that representation is key, and so I'm committed 100%.
My last question, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you, Dr. Ward. Now, we've been having these conversations with young people because everybody's changing from Mexican American to Chicano to Latina to Latinx. Uh, so what is the protocol? Because I hear you say Latina, and so I now just ask my
It's because
students.
she's female. That's why
Yeah.
she says
No,
Latina.
no, no. I'm saying I just ask my students would they prefer to be associate. And some say, "Well, I'm a Chicano or a Chicana or whatever." What is the protocol when it comes down to the county and how we do it? Because if you say Hispanic, some people look at you. I'm his nobody.
No, no, I wouldn't consider myself a Hispanic,
know?
but I understand that in the census and in a lot of other boxes people are checking. That's what the federal government has identified as that. But I consider myself binational and bicultural, right? I was born and raised in Tijuana. I am completely someone who was born and raised, and I mean, I was born and raised in Tijuana, but I was raised on both sides of the border, and so I live very both communities are my communities, right? And so and people can take it in a very different way. But when I went to San Diego State and I was doing the work there, the Chicanos there said that I was officially an honorary Chicana
Okay.
because my corazón
Uh-huh.
is in the Chicano movement, and because I'm a fighter, I'm a guerrera, right? I'm a
Uh-huh.
warrior, and I believe that as a community, we need to find our spaces to make sure that we're advocating and that we deserve to own our power and be able to create policy so that we are also part. We know we're the part. We're the fabric of this community as well, and so we need to make sure that our voices are heard. But I think when you're talking about our communities, it's really interesting because I'm like I said, I'm 50, right,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sort of in that sandwich generation of like, uh, um, I used a cell phone and I remember the world without a cell phone,
Yeah.
right? And I remember the world without, like, I used to be able to just kind of hang out outside my house and I didn't,
Uh-huh.
I like, nobody knew where I was for a long time. And then you
Uh-huh.
came home and it was like, fine. But I tell people that, I respect the word Latinx, particularly because many folks in our community, especially our younger community, feel that that's really important so that we are very open and also embracing of everyone. But I think for me, I am very proud of being a Latina,
Uh-huh.
and my degree is in politics. And then my master's is in women's studies.
Uh-huh.
So for me, gender identity is very important, right? Because I fought so hard to be who I am.
Uh-huh.
And, when I mentioned to you right now that I'm very proud to be the first Latina elected and the first woman of color on the board of supervisors,
Uh-huh.
I don't take that lightly. And I also want other young girls and other young people to know that they can do it too. And so for me, it's very powerful to own that and to be able to share it with people and to say, look, this immigrant kid from Tijuana worked her butt off and she's here.
Uh-huh.
You can do it too.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, that's where it comes from. And that's where the identity politics piece is so important because I want other young people, women of color, to be able to identify with me and say, oh my gosh, if she did it, I can do it because she's like a normal person. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So
Well, we want to thank you for joining us. I really want to tell you that the first chance I get, I'm going to have you carded because I don't believe you're 50. And I think you're pushing your age up on us here. And so we're
oh,
going we
no, thank
we're
you.
going to have to have you carded on that one, okay?
My mama's jeans. Thank you so much. So appreciate
But we
it.
thank you for being with us. We want you to recall and remember that we're here,
Thank
both GOD Radio as well as Voice and Viewpoint. And I just want you to know that Voice and Viewpoint has had a very strong partnership with San Diego County, especially Health and Human Services,
you. Hmm.
probably for at least the past 12 years. And when I first came to San Diego, I worked for the county. I was a law clerk with county council, so I got a chance to really understand how the county works.
Yes.
And it's a very big county. A lot of people have no idea how big this county is. And so we consider ourselves covering the entire county. Even this program that we're on tonight, we have people from different countries that are tuned in, as well as across the state and across the United States. And so we thank you for being with us.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me, and we're going to want to have you back again, and
You got it.
we're gonna keep up with all these things that we've talked about.
Anytime. And Rocco says good night. Look, he's already.
Yeah, I was saying that's when you know that you're in the space to be when your dog gets up there and say you good, I'm gonna go to sleep.
Okay,
Thank you so
Have
much.
a
all
nice
right.
evening.
Thank
Good
Good
you.
night.
night. Thank you for
Okay,
everything. Bye bye.
Bye
bye
bye.
now.
Well, Dr. Warren, that was a good interview. We got to know a little bit more about our um, I won't say assemblywoman, but supervisor.
Supervisor, District
You know,
One, yes.
and it's so funny because there's been a lot of firsts that have been happening around the country, and you mentioned it, and you talked about the press secretary. What was the impact? Is she connected to the black press in any way before now, or
Well,
yeah?
the black press has been excited about her appointment. She was assistant press secretary
Hmm.
with Jen Psaki, whose last day is this Friday. But this young lady worked with Vice President Biden.
Hmm.
So she's been around and she's been vetted and she's got sharp and outstanding credentials. So um, I think it's very interesting that our first black president was not in 8 years able to have an African American press secretary. And when he first went in, there were many of us that were pushing to see that happen.
Hmm.
Now, as you know, I serve on the board of the National Newspaper Publishers Association.
Hmm.
And from the moment the announcement was made, our newswire was just jumping with excitement because it is an important period. And we've had two black women historically that were journalists. Ethel Payne was one. I forget the name of the lady who was the first black White House correspondent. And this is a very serious scenario because if you were in Washington, you when you look at a press conference now, you see people of color in the audience, but you've never seen a person of color other than when this young lady stood in for Jen Psaki
Hmm.
in terms of meetings. So it's an important time, and I think it's consistent with the whole ebb and flow of black women coming into their time from Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Hmm.
All of this is taking place. The tragedy is that it's taken this amount of time for it to
Well,
happen.
I'm not going to say I have jokes, but what I am going to say is what I do like about this young lady is she's coming with all um, the things that the young African American women are talking about, natural hair, coming with your own personality and your own style and not just fitting some cookie cutter. But yet she made it all the way to the top, and now she's in the top position as a press secretary, being her authentic self. And I think that's what I enjoy about seeing her up there is that she's been her authentic self.
Well, one of the comments that was made on social media, and I thought it was significant because when they made the announcement, they stressed the fact that she was LGBTQ, and one of the people writing said, "What does that have to do with the job and the ability to
Hmm.
do the job?"
Hmm.
It's just like Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation. It's not about. Some people want to make it look as though the gender identity is a prevailing factor, which is the same thing they've tried to do with African Americans over the years. You put an African American in a place like Secretary of Defense Austin, and people start questioning because we haven't seen a black Secretary of Defense before. Should this guy be there? And yet, this man is a retired career four-star general. He earned every one of his stars. And so we've always had to be better than other people
Hmm.
because whatever our skills were, they always tried to make our color a weight and an anchor, to hold us back. And so that's why we celebrate each of these victories that we have.
Yeah, and the one thing that I want to say is that, and I'm encouraging people to remain their authentic self. That's the reason why we get along, Dr. Warren, because it don't matter if we got the president in the house or the Queen of England, you are still going to be authentically you, and that's what makes your impact so great because you don't really shift just because it's a person of power or prestige, because the reality is in your authentic self you say I have power and prestige because I'm a king kid, you know.
Well, I do, but I have to, I always say that my growing up was like Moses growing up in Pharaoh's house
Hmm.
because, from the time of 17 years old, I grew up around power, White House, Congress, embassies. And so I grew up, though I was the only one in the room, but I always, because of the people that mentored me, I was there and felt that I belonged wherever I was.
Hmm.
And that's what we have to get young people to see today
Hmm.
and to reach. I keep giving people my 3 E's, which are exposure expands expectation.
Hmm.
So the more you're exposed to,
Hmm.
that makes a difference.
Hmm.
And we can't let that be a pullback just because we're getting a backlash from a bunch of crazy people who who would like to cancel everything that's taken place. We're
Yeah.
not letting it happen.
Yeah, and that's really important is that a lot of people spend a lot of time with this cancellation culture that if we don't agree, we're just going to cancel it out. It don't exist. And we cannot allow that to happen. And I use the cancel culture because even in the church community, they're trying to cancel out and they're making it more difficult to build churches and then get them zoned. If you notice that if a church gets sold, normally it doesn't come back as a church, but it's normally torn down and houses or apartments are being put up on it. So we have to be very mindful that now's the time to live life out loud and live God out loud. I'm working on a message entitled, Are You Ready for the Change? Because so many people are not ready for the change. And just like the children of Israel, they didn't want to be enslaved. But when they saw the work, the faith that they had to use to not be enslaved, they weren't ready for the change, so they missed the promised land.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
they
So
did.
we got to be mindful that we cannot miss the promised land for not being ready for the change.
You're totally right. And speaking of change, I was going to mention this again as the clock is running. I want people to know that we're moving toward a June 7th California primary. We want people to know that there are differences. We got voting that can be drop-offs and in person, and ballots are being mailed out. And we've still got time to register some people. The Voice and Viewpoint has already made some endorsements, like Alex Padilla, to return him to the Senate, because today we had a situation where we could have prevailed on that abortion vote in the Senate. But Manson, the renegade Democrat, I don't know why he just doesn't change over and become a Republican, because the number of the vote was 49 to 51. And if he had voted the way he should have, it would have made a difference. The vice president could have stepped in and broke the tide. And so I encourage people to look at the editorial this week that talks about where we are, because it's not just abortion, it's civil rights, it's voting rights, it's all of these things that are being impacted. And this decision is just the first step. But we want people to understand that our separation of powers structure in terms of government does allow the Congress to reverse what the Supreme Court does. The danger is, and this is why we endorsed already our Secretary of State, Shirley Weber. She's one of those secretaries that's fighting against voter suppression and making sure that things are done. And we are urging the re-election of both Congressman Vargas and Scott Peters, because we don't want to lose control of the Congress. And if we lose control of the Congress, what happened on January 6th in terms of certification, if the Republicans regain control of the House, whoever's elected president next time might not be certified. It might be kicked back until they can maneuver it the way they want it. So this is serious stuff. And we need people to wake up. We got a supervisor in Supervisorial District 4, Nate Fletcher's up. Monica Montgomery in the City Council District is up. We got these positions are up, and we need to look at them. We got a chance to fill a position on the bench with Michael Flanagan, a really good young lawyer that's got a chance to become a judge. And so we need to pay attention. Look at the Voice of Viewpoint online in terms of our register of voter information. We're going to be giving you the polling sites by zip code, where you can drop off and all of these things. And we can't wait 3 weeks from there to the last minute. We need to be on this right now as we go forward.
And I think it's very important that you do your homework this time. Don't say that just because it's a midterm or a primary that you don't get involved. We need to show up big for the primary, because if we don't show up big for the primary, people get squeaked in. You know what I'm saying? We sat back, and I'll be honest with you. When they said that we was going to get a new gas tax, I'm like, when did we vote on that? And I'm like saying there's so many things that just slipped through because
people not paying attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have other positions that we're looking at. Tony Thurman, returning him as superintendent of public instruction. Malia Cohen, who is running to become the first black comptroller of the state of California, which is very important. And she's got a strong opponent, it looked like, in this young lady named Yu, who's running. And we've had Asian domination of the position of controller, which handles the distribution of checks, and so we need to be aware of who's on the ballot, not just vote for people because their name sounds democratic or they got a nice smile or they wear a nice tie. We need to put Gavin Newsom back in. I think about our form of government and people like Winston Churchill once said about democracy. He said democracy is a very poor form of government, but all the others are so much worse.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to get caught missing out, and we don't want to be black people that are just reacting. As I point out this week, Georgia got on the stick right away and started that whole campaign, Black Votes Matter. Okay, and now they got to maintain these two senators, the one black and the one Jewish senator. They got to do that, and we got to be on the stick. If we don't have the challenge in California, we need to be in touch with our relatives and friends in other states to make sure that they register and they vote.
And what we have to know, especially in California, how other states send money here to work against us because they know that we're so heavily Democratic. But I'm not going to say that's enough of that. What I am going to say is that we got to. I need you to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the articles and the issues, the special issues that the Voice and Viewpoint has been putting out, and what's coming up next.
Well, the Voice of Viewpoint 2 weeks ago published its fourth annual Minority Health Report. I want to tell you, even though it's online, that hard copies are still available, and they will be. We're not recycling any of those. They've been sent to medical people. They're being sent around the country. They've been sent to all of our papers in the country, encouraging them. And what we've done is we've just explored the demographics of black health disparities, economics, and not only blacks, but Latino, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, Alaskans. We've covered all of them. It's a 28-page issue with charts and graphs, and it's color, and you can still pick up one. It's the kind of thing that every healthcare provider should have a copy of this because we need to do our homework, and we cover it all from asthma to cancer, the heart attacks, the high blood pressure, all of those issues, patients' Bill of Rights, if you will, Office of Minority Health, and then local stories that are involved with people. And so it's a big deal, and people are really seeking it out, and we're just going to continue making it available in any number that's possible so that people will look at what they need to be on top of and be ready for.
Well, Dr. Warren, I think that, one, kudos to what the newspaper is doing, and kudos to your leadership and your team over there at the Voice and Viewpoint. You are giving not only pertinent information, timely information, but information that we can use almost like a yearly Bible for things that we need to do and be aware of. So kudos to the team over there. Again, we want to encourage you to pick up a hard copy of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint.
And let me just be clear, Dr. Thompson,
Yes,
that our hardworking, energized, excited managing editor, LaTanya West, says she gets the credit for, I discuss and direct staff in terms of what I want, but she's the one that takes it the next step and makes it the reality and brings it together in such a marvelous way. So I'm very excited, and I tell people when they come tell me about how great it is, I said, you need to call and tell LaTanya. She's the one doing the work. I mean, I'm there, I'm steering the ship, but the ship wouldn't run if all of the other pieces that we have a strong team weren't doing their part.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all go pick out a copy of the Voice and Viewpoint. Tune in, check us out. We'll be here next week. We've got some more good topics, some more good interviews right here from the desk of the editor, right here on